Okay, let's try another contact report here. This is contact report 44. And the translator is the Deep L translator, Dyson Devine and Vivian Legg. They're the ones that translated this one. Corrections and improvements made by Catherine Mossman and Joseph Darmanin. And the contact person is Semjase. Okay, this is contact report 44, Monday, 16 February 1976 at 0310 in the morning. Semjase, it's warmer and more comfortable in here. Outside is so very cold. Billy, aha, another quality I do not know about you yet. So far, I always thought that only I would freeze here. Semjase, all life forms suffer from too much cold when this is not exactly a life necessary moment for them. But how about you? Have you had a lot to do today? Billy, you could say that. You know, the Genesis and more recently the prophecies. I was also in Munich and spoke there in front of a good audience for 2.5 hours. I also tried to write a suitable foreword and epilogue for the Decalogue. I guess these are books that he's writing, as it will soon go into print at the Hutter Verlag in Munich. By the way, an extremely nice gentleman, this Mr. Hutter. Mr. Southcheck is also a very likable man. He also works for Hutter Verlag. Semjase, these persons are unfortunately unknown to me. Billy, that is a pity because they are two very nice and kind gentlemen. Semjase, if you say so, then it must be so. Have other things changed? Billy, certainly. You will be pleased. Mrs. von Jacobi is preparing a manuscript of our reports. If possible, she wants to have it published this year. Mrs. Ilse von Jacobi. Unfortunately, it turned out regarding this person that she was absolutely incapable of devoting herself to the work attributed to her, as she did it unfaithfully and interspersed the Semjase reports with her own delusional cult religious philosophies originating from Far Eastern Christian religions and from the Great White Brotherhood. Unfortunately, the Pleiadians, were mistaken on several occasions regarding the judgment of terrestrial humans, because according to their laws and recommendations, one must not penetrate into the innermost spheres of a human being in order to thoroughly examine them. This led to the fact that only the superficial thoughts were registered, and so quite bad deceptions in the mentality of those concerned were overlooked. Unfortunately, this happened to many persons who crept into the internal group for reasons of sensation or espionage. They hid their real reasons and attitudes under false and deceptive surface thoughts, which were monitored and checked only by the Pleiadians/Pleiaren, because according to their laws and recommendations, a deeper reaching into deeper thoughts is not allowed to them, in order to preserve the personality of the examined ones. Billy, in parentheses, Patah's correction, we are also just human beings. 8th November 2001. Okay. Semjase, that is very good, but she should make sure that certain things are not mentioned openly to the general public and that they are circumscribed, because one cannot pass everything on to the uninitiated, as we have spoken about from time to time. The original words can only be expected of those who are very familiar with everything. Billy, you will not have any trouble with that, because Jacobi's wife thought of it herself. She is a specialist and supposedly knows all about such things. But I am surprised that you speak that way. In the past, you always wanted everything to be passed on true to the original. Semjase, either you want to make a joke with me or you misunderstood us in this respect. For the general public, of course, the reports will have to be written down for the next 4 years, but for the initiated, they will have to be distributed in their original form. Billy, then I misunderstood you, but what do you mean by initiates? Semjase, these are all the people in your group and all those who will join you over time. From 1980, however, everything essential may be made accessible to the public, but strictly confidential matters and certain internal group concerns must be kept out. Billy, aha, that is finally clear now. Now it is plain to understand. You know there have been some difficulties. Semjase, in what form? Billy, Hans Jacob in Wetzikon, oh, here comes Hans again, has begun to turn and has distanced himself, whereby he made unjustified accusations against me. Semjase, unfortunately that was to be feared. Billy, why? Have you known something? Semjase, during all this time I kept him under my watch and gave him food for thought until 2 months ago. He tried quite well and achieved many small successes. However, due to the demands of my task, I had to interrupt the watch over him and leave him to himself. Therefore, I feared already at that time that he would fall back again. This was especially so because at that time he was again increasingly caught by fraudulent individuals who filled his head with many lies, especially with dangerous mystical delusions, and I, too, was spoken against in an unfair manner. As a result, it is likely that today he even secretly insults me, because this form unfortunately coincides with his manner. Moreover, he is as immature as a young man and is not yet able to recognize the truth, let alone bear it when it is told to him. Well, maybe they ought to just kick him out. My thoughts, sorry. Therefore, he will also speak against you. That is a great pity, because he could have had the best hopes. But the fact that he cannot get away from his misleading mysticism will hit him hard, as I explained to you earlier in confidence. Billy, you did, but I still think it is a pity that he fell off like that. Can you not just gently poke at him? Semjase, I'm not allowed to do that. I know exactly what you mean by that, but your compassion is misplaced. Besides, you have no responsibility to bear. You have done your best, perhaps a little more. Billy, then I guess I have to. Semjase, certainly, you should not undertake anything. Billy, okay, then not. But what is it with the Duist, D-U-I-S-T, Duist, which is in parentheses a German-based UFO interest group, and parents? There was some uproar there? Semjase, that is not your fault either. What you call uproar is a difference of opinion. For the time being, however, you should not bother about it anymore. Unfortunately, we committed some serious omission mistakes on our part, and therefore drew your attention to this Druist far too early. Unfortunately, we were not able to see all things clearly, which I have explained to you before. For my part, at that time I had not been familiar with these tasks for long, and certainly not with the earth humans, so I let myself be misled many times. But through your help I have learned a great deal and am now much richer in knowledge. Billy, that pleases me. Semjase, certainly, but for now you really should not bother about the Duist any more. Only in a much later time will you be given this task again, which cannot yet be described as certain, because we have come across many negative things with the Duist in the meantime. For the time being, however, you have nothing to do with it, at least not so long as the couple Viet is still leading this community. Soon, however, this will no longer be the case, then perhaps everything will look completely different. It is to be hoped that no more people will take over the leadership of the Duist, who are so much trapped and enslaved in fanatical religious concerns, as is the case with the present leadership. However, this is far from certain, so there is no security for it. Billy, it is good that you say that, because these words would be chalked up to me again. Semjase, the earth human does not generally like to speak the truth with open words. Billy, who are you telling that to? Semjase, I understand you very well, but do not cheat yourself, because these things cannot be changed yet. Enjoy my message, which I have to give to you. It was decided that in the course of this year that you should again take various pictures of our beamships. Billy, I think that is good, actually. Semjase, maybe we can give you something very special. However, do not ask this question now, because I am not yet allowed to give an answer about it. Billy, okay, look here. Fräulein Rufer in Zurich gave me this note. Can you read it? Semjase, sure, but what should I do with it? Billy, Ms. Rufer asked whether you can impart information to me for her about these works and the authors. Semjase, I am very sorry, but I know neither these books named here nor the authors. Only this name here is known to me, this Saint Germain, a quite malicious person who did many things deceitfully, supposedly in order also to fulfill dangerous things for the Freemasons, through which they in turn allegedly could seize control of the world. If not, as would be falsely asserted, order had been troubled from the other side. Everything is naturally not correct. Rather, it is based on a pure invention of Freemason unfriendly elements. Billy, oh, that is how it is? They still have Saint Germain clubs and so on today. Can you tell me more about it? Semjase, sure, but it will take some time. Billy, certainly. Semjase, your wife is in deep sleep and I must be concerned about it. When one of your children wakes up, ... Billy, I understand, but it may yet last for about 2 hours. Otherwise, you would not be worried about it either. Semjase, sure, that is true, but today I noticed that your wife and children are a bit burdened, so I was not allowed to influence them too deeply. Your wife has confused dreams. Billy, oh, I did not think of that. She absolutely wanted to watch a ghost film on television, and these twerps will now, of course, haunt her dreams. Semjase, that is how it will be, because she has a pronounced imagination, which unfortunately is not always of good values, and in negative form can and will also harm you. Billy, you said that before. Semjase, sure, but she also has a negative and untruthful influence on her surroundings and on many people, and now also on children, who also dream confused things. Billy, oh my goodness, are the junior ghosts chirping up through their dreams now? Semjase, that may well be possible, even if they did not watch television. You yourself probably have no respect at all for ghosts. Billy, me? Are you crazy? Semjase, now I have once put you on the receiving end. Billy, you already have expressions and sayings like a trucker. You learn quite fast. Semjase, I also have a good teacher. Billy, thanks, but do you not want to tell me about this Saint Germain now? Semjase, I will tell you that later when you write this report. Billy, that is a good idea. Then I will still have some time to ask you some other questions. Semjase, but please do not let it take too long, because you really have to go back soon. Billy, certainly, I will do so. My first question is for a contact person, Mr. Raps, who you said was really a contact person. We would now like to invite him to join us and do not know what to do. Is he valuable to us and really trustworthy? Semjase, unfortunately he has not been for a long time, which is why all his memories of his pseudo-experiences have been totally eliminated. Since then, he has been concerned with bringing untrue things of himself into circulation. Billy, oh dear, that is bad luck. But why is that? Semjase, even before he went public, he did not fulfill his duties, so all his memories were taken away from him. Ah, so they gave him stuff to do. Some ETs gave him something to do, and he didn't do it, so they took the memories out of his head. Only very vague and uncertain things were left behind in him, through which he, since then, at his own discretion, claimed things that do not apply in any form. So he was a contact, and they wanted him to do something. He didn't do it, so they erased that part out of his memories. Billy, and what about his report? Semjase, you mean the one written by him and about him? Billy, of course. Do others exist? Semjase, there are certain other things, yes, but they do not correspond to the truth and any more than the report mentioned. Billy, then why did you call him our contact? Semjase, because he actually had real visionary contact at first and was therefore actually a contact person who, however, no longer has a memory of it today. Billy, oh, so then we can do without him. Semjase, you would do well to do so. Billy, beautiful. But now, despite your latest request not to ask any more, another question about the persons you marked as negative. Is it not possible with them, or at least with one or the other, that they had some kind of contact after all? That this is not known to you or to yours, and that these contacts have simply slipped through your fingers, so to speak? Semjase, that is absolutely impossible. The people I have marked as negative are not contact persons. In any case, they never had contact with extraterrestrial intelligences that reached them from outside of the Earth, neither through free space nor through a dimensional gate, because these penetration possibilities are so hermetically controlled that it is completely impossible for even a tiny particle unit to be able to pass through without being registered by us or the other intelligences monitoring the Earth. So, in case you haven't realized it, this is me. In case you haven't realized it, the Earth is being monitored by several races, not just the Pleiadian, looks like. If, however, an intrusion into the earthly space takes place, then everything is very precisely monitored and registered. These controls and registrations do not give any evidence that the negative persons mentioned could be positive. Billy, but is it not possible that they have penetrated in a distorted or invisible form? Semjase, even that is completely impossible. Billy, but why did you say with different names that a contact was possible, but that you did not know that? Semjase, that is very simple. For a little more than a year now, our surveillance has been temporarily interrupted for very specific reasons, which I am not allowed to mention. During this time, it is then possible that unknown objects are able to penetrate. Billy, that sounds plausible to me, but do you now interrupt this monitoring permanently from time to time? Semjase, no, we will resume them in full in the foreseeable future, but only for a few years for certain reasons, after which we will loosen the controls again. But I do not want to exclude the possibility of explaining to you that the persons I have described as negative may have been in connection with the intelligences of Giza, or may still be in connection with them, because we do not exercise precise control over them. Billy, so this possibility remains open? Semjase, sure, but the persons concerned would have been very badly misdirected. The same goes for those who have been deceived by earthly intelligences, namely by those who have the stolen beam ships of the Germans at their disposal and pretend to be extraterrestrials to earthly men. Let's do that one again. The same goes for those who have been deceived by earthly intelligences, namely by those who have stolen beam ships of the Germans at their disposal and pretend to be extraterrestrials to earthly men. So somebody's using Hitler's beam ships and pretending to be ETs. Billy, man, the cuckoo is to become wise there. Well, what about this Ashtar Sharen? Is he still in the area? Semjase, he is very well, but his activity has finally ceased. However, he is not so close that one could still call it in the area. Moreover, we found out that he poses a certain danger which we have not yet been able to determine. Billy, also good, but what about the young journalist who wrote or simply reproduced all these Charan reports? I was able to read these reports in the meantime because they were made available to me. Semjase, the man is not what he is described as. He was never even outside the earthly atmosphere, and even less did he experience the things he reported. All his statements are pure fantasy. Billy, then I do not understand that Ashtar Sharen should actually exist anyway, if this man invented everything. Semjase, that is also very easy to explain. Ashtar Sharen had a real visionary influence on him when he was still in doubt and unfortunately ignored various things, such as the latter total elimination when he completely renounced the Giza intelligences. Thus the man, if you want to call the person that, came to mix certain still vague memories with his boundless imagination and to spread them as truth. All these things only became known to me less than 9 days ago because the clarification of these things was a small part of my task that has kept me in suspense for so long. If Quetzal were not still very helpful, although he is freed from this task, then I would still have no clarity today. But that is really all I can officially tell you about it. Billy, all right, I thank you for that. Now I see a lot more clearly. If I now bring your remaining explanations together with your two previous ones, then the picture is nicely rounded off. Semjase, sure, but now you should go. It is time. Billy, I am already going. I only have one question left. Is your mother actually still alive? Semjase, but of course. She lives together with father in his spaceship. So she lives on the Great Spacer with Ptah. Billy, it is a pity I did not meet her. Surely she is a wonderful woman. Semjase, you flatter me very much. My mother is indeed a very wonderful woman, but maybe you will have the opportunity to meet her someday. Billy, that would make me very happy. At least greet her anonymously from me and congratulate her on her pretty daughter. Semjase, huh? I do not understand you. Billy, is it so difficult to send my regards? Semjase, I will gladly do that, but you are mistaken, for she already knows you much better than you can imagine. But I do not understand your words with her daughter, for I am not the only one. So Semjase's got siblings. Billy, so much for the better, then think for a moment. Take care, dear girl. Semjase, goodbye. And then it goes into transmission of thoughts. Semjase, now as promised, I will give you the details of the man called Saint Germain. Are you still able to write everything? It is already 0450 in the morning. So 4:50 in the morning. Billy, of course, just do not worry. But first I have a question that has been on my mind for some time and that I forgot to ask you again and again. Semjase, you are tireless. When do you sleep at all? Billy, usually when I am in bed. Semjase, your answer is logical, but it does not answer my question. Billy, do you really want to know? Semjase, sure, that is what I am asking. Billy, well, normally it never gets earlier than 4 o'clock in the morning before I get to bed. My wife, too, slowly develops into a moth. I just do not understand how she manages that, because in the morning she has to get up early again. Semjase, female Wesson are able to endure more in this respect than men. It is the mother factor in them that allows them to recover faster than the male life forms with much less sleep. A man, therefore, needs much more sleep than a woman. But how many hours do you sleep? Billy, oh, it is already enough. Semjase, my question was very clear. Billy, all right, about 4 to 5 hours a day. Every few weeks on a Sunday, I might be able to sleep a full 14 or even 16 hours in one sweep. Semjase, that is far too little. You should rest at least 8 hours a day in your sleep. You are a person who needs a lot of sleep. Billy, first can and then do. The days simply have far too few hours, so I cannot sleep enough. Semjase, you are joking again. If a day with you had 50 hours, then you would still work 45 hours. Billy, oh, let us not do that. It will not lead to anything anyway. Semjase, you should be more concerned about your health, yet now ask that which you cannot drop. Therewith you then can still get some sleep. Billy, oh so, yes. How is it actually you know all the literature that has been written about UFOs or contact persons? Semjase, no, for since we know the facts very well, we do not need them. Certainly, I have studied various texts, especially any that I have received from you, but I am very disappointed how incorrect, falsified, and without great truth these are rendered, not to mention those records that portray pure, mendacious worthlessness. Billy, that is enough for me. I did not want to know more. Then you can start your explanation about Saint Germain. Semjase, so listen then. But are you really not too tired? Your nerves are vibrating a lot. That is not good. Billy, do you absolutely want to keep me from my work? Semjase, you are simply unteachable in this respect. You drive yourself to bad exhaustion with your powers, yet as you want. Saint Germain's real name is Rakoczy, Rakoczy, whereby he also assigned himself other names as, for example, Aymar or Marquis de Betmore, and so forth. The name Saint Germain was only used by the adventurer in his self-appointed status as Count Saint Germain. Born in the sign of Aries in the year 1711 in Colonia, you call it Cologne today, although a Portuguese origin was attributed to him. He died in the year 1784 at the age of 73 years. In his lifetime, he was the greatest deceiver, charlatan, liar, and spy, and indeed in the service and commission of a sect in Germany which was obsessed with world domination at that time. He passed himself off as being 1,000 years old, whereby, however, he was often got entangled in his own statements, and so differences of up to 300 years age variation came about. Well, I guess the more lies you put out, sometimes sooner or later you end up crossing them, so people know that you're lying. In and of himself, he was quite low intelligence, which he, however, through his enormous cleverness, cunning, manual skill, and alchemistic knowledge, and so forth, could again offset, and even attained extraordinarily good results in sleight of hand that he then passed off as magical powers. He was subsequently named a Wonder Man, and no one even suspected that he was the worst deceiver of his time. Only a European Christian sect was oriented about this, because he was indeed a man who stood in their service, and who also thereby endeavored to take counts, princes, and kings, as well as clergy and other dignitaries, into his power, in order thereby to make them amenable to the sect, whose members sought and thereby hoped finally to realize their plans for world domination. Therefore, he also primarily concerned himself around the high society of France, which, in keeping with the plans of the sect, was to be the next land annexed by Germany, through which already the greatest part of Europe at that time was to stand under the sect's control. The initiates of the sect at that time quite consciously spun a fable intertwined legend around Saint Germain in order to have him appear in the light of an immortal and a master, although he did not belong as a member of the sect at all, which did not hinder him, Saint Germain, from portraying himself as master of the sect and therewith as an initiate. He knew very well to expand the legend spun about him by the sect and to provide enormous fame for himself. It was only thereby astonishing that the sect had actually included him in their plans in this form as an outsider, a fact that we, from our side, also could not clarify. He received quite personally from King Frederick the Great the awarded honorary title of an immortal, after which Saint Germain implanted in him, with the power of his uncommonly high hypnotic capabilities, the notion that he, Saint Germain, was already 2004 years old. Frederick the Great was himself not conscious of the employed hypnosis and was of the belief that he had obtained this knowledge about the age of Saint Germain through higher spirits. So also the knowledge thereby that the magician had an immortal making elixir at his disposal that Saint Germain also manufactured after a corresponding discussion with Frederick the Great. In truth, however, the mixture was an evil broth made out of various hallucinogenic poisons and drugs that called forth deep euphoria. Through the widespread sect, he was also privy to European history, from which he retained any 50 small details with his truly phenomenal memory, with which he astounded and quite terrified them that he was the best connoisseur of history, and deluded them that he was, through this, all-knowing. Through his uncommon shrewdness and cunning, he reached also into the most intimate secrets of the various kings' families and of many other humans that he then revealed again as secret knowledge, which often shifted the people into angst and terror, or allowed them to presume he had supernatural powers and capabilities. Many times he obtained such intimate secrets through secret dealings with female servants, who he paid off with material things of value and with bodily love, which was not a burden for him because, on the one hand, he had at his disposal very enormous material wealth, and on the other hand, he was very sexually potent. Like a Casanova, I guess. A favorite means of obtaining secrets was, however, his hypnotic capabilities that he especially brought into engagement with highly positioned personalities, especially with female Wesson, and thereby unlocked the ultimate and most intimate secrets that he had then, at a later point in time, revealed to them again after he had taken the memory of the hypnosis from them. Thereby he appeared as a giant among all the magicians of his time, So it was no wonder that he was raised to the position of a real master. He occupied himself yet, however, with many kinds of other things. So, for example, also with diamonds and the other kinds of precious stones and minerals, etc. He could also produce fake gold, a chemical covering of metal that then behaved like gold. And the deceived people believed in their delusion and ignorance that he could manufacture gold. Also, he knew how to purify contaminated precious stones through his magic. These, however, he regularly retained for a longer time because he was not able to work on them himself. So he always brought them to a cousin in Holland who then purified these precious stones for him, in that he ground off the cloudiness which existed in this material. He asserted or did yet many other quite secretive things. So, for example, also that he simply transmuted himself into invisibility, which was, again, however, based on nothing other than his hypnotic powers, through which he let his observers live in the delusion that he had transmuted himself into invisibility. Also, he claimed to have often been in China, yet that did not correspond to the truth, because he never left the European area. When he explained again that he must now travel to China, then in his journey he went only to Berlin, where he had to give an account of his deeds and works in the stronghold of the sects, and where he then also received new orders. Very astonishingly, the sect alchemists instructed him also in these times in alchemistic matters, whereby they rejuvenated him many times, also through their best means and through small and fine facial operations, whereby he also always awoke the impression that he did not age, but rather was constantly about 40 years old. This was brought about in Berlin, in the stronghold of the sects at that time, but which no longer belonged to the actual mother sect. Rather, it was a splinter group that had established its seat there. The high seat of the real mother sect was namely in Vienna, and Saint Germain also worked for that. So he worked for 4 different masters at the same time, namely for France, for Friedrich the Great, in Germany, who was his best and most beloved, most benevolent defender, for the splinter sect stronghold in Berlin, and for the actual mother sect stronghold in Vienna. As Saint Germain died at the age of 73, his alleged immortality could only thereby be saved by the Berlin sect, always, again and again, seeking suitable men who resembled the appearance of Saint Germain. They performed fine face alteration operations on them, so that they were even more like the deceiver. These men stepped into appearance then, after his death, to appear personally as Saint Germain, after which they were instructed over long years by the sect members in all kinds of knowledge and abilities. Out of these splinter sectarians then developed in the course of time a fanatical religious sect that still today secretly drives its mischief, and has also founded sister societies and so forth. But the founding sect has not, up to today, left off seeking out suitable men, which they make compliant with horrendous amounts of money, and whose appearance resembles Saint Germain's, and that they then changed and made into initiates through engagement of operations on the facial characteristics and through alchemistic and magical teachings, who are, however, in truth, only better conjurers, who then allow to present themselves as Saint Germain, and indeed until the current time. Billy, actually a long story, but I find it all quite vile. Semjase, the earth human has never yet known scruples, if she wants to obtain a fulfillment. Semjase, the earth human has never yet known scruples, if she wants to obtain a fulfillment. But now go to sleep. That is all I had to say. Farewell, and recover well. Greet all our friends too. Goodbye. Billy, take care. I will just lie down on the divan. I guess that's a couch. The divan, for a while, because in about 30 minutes the children will be back and making a lot of noise. Then sleeping is vinegar anyway. Semjase, I thought something like that. Goodbye. That is the end of Contact Report 44. So that was a physical contact in the beginning, and later on also a thought transfer contact as well. And I'm going to get out of here, so I'll catch you again on the next one. Which, I guess, let's see here. The next one obviously would be contact 45. Yeah, 44 and 1 is 45. All right, it's been a long day. See ya. Bye.